The review embargo for The Acolyte is dropped, so I can now officially talk about the first 4 episodes of the series. Tomorrow and every Wednesday from now on, we will be reviewing each new episode in detail, but today I wanted to give you my longer, but still spoiler-free thoughts on the series so far. The short version is that I like what I've seen. Leslie Headland's description of the show as an onion is very appropriate. Each new episode gives you a new understanding of the characters and the events. I liked the first episode, but it wasn't until the second that I felt well and truly hooked by the mystery. There's a moment where my eyes went wide with realization, and I saw that what I thought was the central mystery wasn't, and this new thing was the big question that I can't wait to have answered. Molly and I did get to go to the premiere, but we watched the screeners first and tried to emulate a weekly release. Kind of. Basically, we watched the first 2, discussed them, I wrote my review, we spent a day digesting them, and then we watched the third and repeated the process. We had a great time talking about theories and stuff, and that also means my reviews and the speculation within them are all genuine. I'm not spouting out ideas I know wind up being right. I also wrote a lot about each episode. Covering The Acolyte so far reminds me of covering Andor a bit. There's so much to analyze and discuss, not just as a Star Wars fan looking for Easter eggs or whatever, but as someone who likes exploring themes surrounding the Jedi, the Sith, the light side, the dark side, philosophy of the Force, and so on. How do we deal with trauma and loss? How can our past be manipulated into darkness? That's one sign that I am very into the series. Another sign is my own reactions. I tend to be a very boring reactor. I've got resting Sith face when I watch new Star Wars because my brain is just working in overdrive. But there are some moments that had my heart pounding with worry over some of the new characters. Speaking of, I do like all the new characters. May would be the standout for me. Amandla Stenberg crushes the role. I haven't connected with the Jedi characters as much, but each episode reveals more and more complexity to them. On the surface, they try to be straight-laced Jedi, but there are clues to what's going on underneath. Some of them appear to be perfect Jedi, but I'm over here like, what are you hiding? I think my biggest criticism of the series is the way most of the episodes end. Some of them stop very abruptly. It can kind of feel like a movie that's been divided up into equal parts for time rather than resolution. On one hand, it always leaves me wanting more. I screamed at my TV at the end of one of the episodes because I desperately wanted to see what would happen next. So that's good, but some of the episodes left me without a sense that we had just completed a chapter, if that makes sense. Each episode does have a central theme or event. It's not like they all run together, but I wonder if binging the series will feel a little better than watching week to week. Maybe that's on purpose to encourage rewatching, because I do think this will be a series that'll be fun to revisit. Having seen all 4 episodes and then going back and watching the first 2 at the premiere, I definitely picked up on some new interesting details and bits of foreshadowing. I'm sure people will be curious how The Acolyte matches up with the other live-action Star Wars series. I've seen a bunch of people already comparing it to Andor. Heck, I did earlier in this video. In terms of tone, I would argue that it's somewhere between Andor and The Mandalorian. I love Andor to death, but it was a very serious show and only occasionally seemed to veer into the pulpy, weird side of Star Wars. It also had some episodes that just kind of end, as Cassian walks through a scrapyard or is told he needs to study schematics. The Mandalorian is far more lighthearted, with almost every episode visiting a strange new planet with Din and Grogu on a fun adventure. That's not to say it can't get serious or doesn't have themes to explore, it's just more whimsical overall. The Acolyte is more serious than The Mandalorian, but still has a lot more weird aliens, puppets, and locations than Andor. It's exploring deeper themes, but at least so far they're not quite as heavy as what Andor got into, like those amazing prison episodes. Like I said, I love Andor, but I wouldn't describe it as fun or lighthearted. The Acolyte strikes a good balance in tone, so it doesn't feel like it's just The Mandalorian or just Andor set in another time period. It feels like its own distinct thing, which is great. I'm always pushing for more variety in Star Wars, so here we're getting variety in eras, tone, and genre. I would also say The Acolyte leans more toward Andor in its production. Practical sets are used more than the volume. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that the series used some stagecraft or LED screens at some point, and some sets are better than others, but overall, it looks good. It's nice to see that characters can run around a set or even jump up the stairs onto a second floor, instead of some of the action scenes in, say, Obi-Wan Kenobi, where characters can only run so far before running out of space and needing to cut. Speaking of the action, the hand-to-hand fighting is a lot of fun to see. I like that there's a reason for it too. The Jedi aren't running around pulling out their lightsabers at the first sign of danger. They use martial arts because they don't want to escalate things, and then when lightsabers come out, you know it's for a good reason. It lines up well with the High Republic stories, where even Jedi starfighters like Vectors require lightsabers to unlock their weapon systems because the Jedi want to be aware of their decisions that could potentially end the life of another being. There's also a reason May primarily uses martial arts to fight, but I'll let you learn why that is in the show. Since I mentioned the books and comics, I'll speak directly to the High Republic fans, and to non-fans, because I still see people wondering if they have to read anything before the series begins, and no, you don't. The show takes place 100 years after the books. It's High Republic in aesthetic more than anything. It's awesome to see the white and gold temple robes, the brown and gold mission robes, the Padawans with their colored sashes, Vectors, and of course Vernestra Rwoh is around. The Acolyte links to the era, but isn't super directly connected to the events of the books and comics, at least so far, which I think is the right move, because it helps keep the series very accessible to new fans. The Mandalorian started that way, but has crept more and more into the larger Star Wars story, bringing in Bo-Katan, Ahsoka, some little-known guy named Luke Skywalker, the cast of Star Wars Rebels, and now we're building to a villain who was first introduced 30 years ago. I think the Mandoverse is doing a good job at shepherding new fans into that stuff, but it can still be daunting to hear people like me talk about all these other connections. They might feel like they're on the outside looking in. In The Acolyte, we're all on the same page. We're unraveling a mystery together with new characters. Some fans aren't interested in that. They prefer when Star Wars is connected to what came before, and that is totally fine. I love seeing live-action Star Wars expanding like the books and comics and video games have been doing for decades. And again, that's why I think variety is so important in Star Wars. We can still have the Mandoverse building on the foundations of more familiar Star Wars stories, while the Acolyte helps construct new foundations along with the High Republic Publishing Initiative. So to wrap up here, I am happy with the Acolyte so far. I'll compare it to Andor again because I walked out of the first 3 episodes of that series knowing that I liked it and seeing its potential, and then by the end it was my favorite live-action series, but it took me a few episodes to get it. The same happened to me with The Mandalorian. I was a little unsure during the first season. I'm not ready to say The Acolyte is going to unseat Andor in my eyes, but I absolutely see its potential, and I'm having a great time watching and analyzing it so far. The first 4 episodes set up a solid mystery. The way episode 4 ended, I could see episode 5 picking up the story in multiple different ways, and I'm excited about all the possibilities. As long as the back half of the season sticks the landing, I think The Acolyte is going to be really special. But that's all I have to say about The Acolyte without diving deep into the plot and mysteries. Tonight the series premieres, and tomorrow morning I'll have our first full review video out for the premiere episodes, and we'll have our live show in the evening to discuss it with all of you. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all our Acolyte coverage, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page, where we'll have our video reactions and audio commentaries for every episode as they release. As always, thanks for watching, and for light and life.